Welcome to today's program, Can We Grow More Food with Less Resources? Food production is the biggest human impact on the planet's resources, so we'll have a lot to talk about. Before we dive in, a few quick housekeeping items. We are recording today's session. All attendees will receive a link to the recording, along with some helpful resources from our presenters, whom I'll introduce in just a moment. We're planning to share a couple short videos with you during our webinar, so it's a good idea to check your audio settings in the GoToWebinar tray on the right-hand side of your screen. You may need to adjust your computer or device settings as well. If you're hearing me now, we're off to a good start. We've set aside some time at the end of our session for Q&A, so please use the question pane at any time to ask us a question. If we run out of time to answer all the questions we received today, we will follow up with you individually. Let's get started. I'm Caroline Nordahl with Bluelab. We are honored to work alongside growers, partners, and thought leaders toward a common purpose, the art of growing for a healthier world. Our team is committed not only to delivering the most trusted tech for measuring, monitoring, and controlling fundamental crop parameters, but also to empowering growers. That's why we bring experts together to tackle the tough questions and build community. With that, I'm delighted to present you to Dr. Matthew Mickens, Chief Science Officer for Elevate Farms of Toronto, Canada, joining us today from New Jersey. Matt, I remember a dinner with you and a group of scientists from all over the world exchanging what sounded like futuristic ideas for using light wavelengths like cooking recipes to coax more nutrition and flavor from plants. And at the time, your work was benefiting the health of astronauts, but clearly had the potential for commercial food production. We'll hear from Matt shortly about his important work at Elevate Farms.
Yeah, Caroline, it was amazing. I mean, it's really good to see you, and those were good times that we've had over those dinners, definitely.
And more to come.
Yeah, it's amazing because when we interacted in person last time, it was, we were both in different careers, and here we are. We have different new roles, but yet we're trying to solve problems in the same industry in CEA, and so it's an honor.
It's a privilege. It's my privilege. Also with us is Derek Smith, Executive Director of the Resource Innovation Institute based in Portland, Oregon.
Hey, Caroline.
Hey, Derek. I suppose enjoying good food together must stimulate ideas, because I recall a different group dinner with Derek some 4 years ago. He shared a prediction that is now coming to fruition, and I often hear it repeated by others. We were gathered for a cannabis conference, educating growers about reducing the natural resource footprint of their operations. When Derek shared that while he perceived cannabis growers as vital early adopters of sustainable tech and practices, what he was really excited about was the idea that our collective work would one day reach acceptance among food growers, an even more significant opportunity to effect massive change. Matt and Derek, you've both had fascinating journeys that led you to the work you do now. We're eager to hear your insights. Let's go to you first, Derek.
Great. And I'll just get the share tray open here, excuse me. All right, can you see my screen?
We sure can, looks perfect.
Okay, great, awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Caroline and Tracy and the whole Bluelab team for being the leaders in promoting sustainability that you are, and supporting producers, and really hosting this really valuable webinar series. I'm honored to be here. I'm definitely honored to speak alongside one of the great scientists in the CEA market with Matt Mickens. And as I begin my conversation here about can we grow more food for less impact, basically, what I want to kind of put a little bit of a modifier on that, and really I want to emphasize in my conversation put a how in front of that, how we can grow more produce for less, right? More food for less. I've been working on sustainability and climate issues for the past 20 years in a variety of different sectors, public, private, nonprofit. Had a lot of great opportunities, but I've never seen a bigger opportunity to have a positive impact than doing the work that we're talking about here today, right? And as you mentioned, we started our work as a nonprofit organization 5 years ago, looking at the cannabis cultivation sector, working with governments like Massachusetts and California, and supply chain leaders like Fluence and Grodan, and utilities from all over North America, including ComEd, Efficiency Nova Scotia, and on the West Coast at Energy Trust of Oregon. And we're all trying to figure out how much energy is being used in these indoor cultivation environments, and how is that energy being used? How efficiently is it being used? What are the KPIs to measure efficiency? So we've been working on all those issues for more than 5 years, and we're just really thrilled to be at this moment in front of you here today with a USDA investment that I'll tell you about that enables us to traverse over into the broader CEA market and support produce and other crop growers, and basically to leverage the infrastructure we've built to support governments who are trying to figure out how to deal with policy, and utilities who are trying to figure out how to validate the efficiency that's going to come off of technology so that they can provide, buy down support for growers to afford the technology, and ultimately to support producers on their path to more efficiency and productivity. So with that, I'm just going to share with you very quickly a little bit about RII. I'm going to go into a little more detail about our USDA project, and then I'm going to hand it back to Matt, who's going to share with you about Elevate Farms, and I'm really excited to learn more about what they're up to in their leadership model. And then I'll swing back and tell you more specifically about the how we can move toward this future that we all want. And from our perspective, it's really about validating performance in these facilities, the efficiency of use of resources, and the productivity of those operations to generate crops. So real quickly, we're an objective, data-driven nonprofit. As Caroline said, we've been around for several years, based in Portland, Oregon. Got a lot of expertise on our team and at the board level, including one of the former board members of the U.S. Green Building Council who oversaw LEED as it was scaling. Our vision is really around resilience, and we see that farmers of today are facing climate risk, and basically needing to deal with that issue on a daily basis, and trying to figure out how to adopt technology to be more productive, or just to basically thrive and survive. And the values we undertake our work with are agility, transparency, community, and transformation. We're not about incremental change. We really want to we really want to help shape a transformation toward efficiency and productivity for the CEA market. So we lead the measurement, adoption, and celebration of the world's most efficient agricultural ideas. And what that means is, on the measurement side, is we're looking at both efficiency and productivity, as I've said. We've got the KPIs on energy emissions, water, and waste, and we're working every day with producers and governments and utilities to establish benchmarks and baselines. We're really out to help people adopt the most efficient practices. And that's through facilitating best practices and developing standards, and then training the market, supporting policy development, supporting utility program development. And at the end of the day, what we're out to do is to celebrate. We want to recognize those leaders who are taking steps to make their operations most efficient, and who are working with us to verify that their performance is aligned with the claims that they're making, so that we can get them that leadership recognition that they deserve, and that consumers can be made aware of the choices that they're making, and the impacts of those choices. Got a great team, very talented technical team. It's growing. And as you see in the bottom left there, we're going to be investing in producer services and benchmarking support for CEA producers, thanks to the USDA investment. So what that means is basically we're here for producers. If you want to benchmark your facility, you want to know how efficient you are, if you want to compare your performance to other operations, that's what we're here for. Please reach out and this team will support you along your journey. We've got hundreds of folks and organizations that are behind what we're doing. I mentioned the USDA. We've also been funded by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. We've got a number of partnerships with utilities and efficiency programs and producers and throughout the supply chain and with standards organizations as well. The heartbeat of what we do is really in our technical advisory council, where we bring together a multidisciplinary set of folks, utilities, governments, contractors, engineers, cultivators, manufacturers of equipment, bring everybody together in a consensus-based way in working groups on specific subject matter, all with the shared objective to get good, reliable, peer-reviewed information for producers so that producers can have confidence in making the choices on efficiency that they have in front of them. And we know that it's really hard to know who to trust out there. There's a lot of people selling snake oil or saying that this is going to save you this much, but really, how do you operate it effectively in these very dynamic, interactive environments to get the business goals that you want? That's what we're out to help producers with. So we do a lot of writing, we do a lot of publishing. We've got a lot of best practices guides out there that are free downloads on our website. Right now, those are mostly geared toward the subject of cannabis cultivation, but everything applies to indoor cultivation, from how to measure PPFD all the way to how to size your HVAC systems appropriately. We also publish primers for utilities and governments so they know more about the market and how to approach the market, how to work with growers. And then we also have some partnerships with several media organizations. And so you might see us in some magazines you read. I'll just point out that we've got a controls and automation best practices guide coming out in July, and it'll be relevant to everyone. We're also training the market, and we get hired by utilities and governments all over the North America right now and globally soon. To host live events and then have on-demand recorded content on our learning management system, and a lot of distribution partners. So you can check us out on YouTube, elsewhere, to get a glimpse of what we do. And like I said, we have free services for producers. So if you want to look at a portfolio level of across your set of cultivation assets, how you're doing, how those operations are comparing to each other, we can help you do that. Energy, emissions, water, and waste. We also help you understand how to maximize utility incentives, as an example. We've been doing a lot of things lately, hosting conferences where we're bringing together producers, utilities, and governments to really understand how everybody can work collaboratively to make sure that policies are actually driving the results that governments want in terms of supporting efficiency and supporting business models, supporting cultivators directly, advising utilities on how to think about not just energy savings, but actually how to help producers know how to use technology so that they can achieve increased quality or other business outcomes that they want. And we held an event last month that had over 400 registrants talking about dehumidification. So we get pretty technical, and we invite y'all to check us out and what we're up to. We have a really amazing advisory council that's helping us figure out this model and how to take it globally. So we've got some CEA leaders, we've got the Farm and Nature lead for World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we've got some environmental and philanthropic groups, and of course the supply chain leaders with us. So real briefly, I'm gonna tell you about the partnership we have here in the United States with the USDA. And this is Market Transformation for Efficient Sustainable CEA. I won't go into detail here, but there's basically 7 objectives in this work over 3 years. And as you'll see, we want to invite you all to be part of this very important publicly funded effort. And it really starts with characterizing the market. What are the barriers to efficiency here? What does the supply chain look like? What are the biggest leverage points to help producers move toward more efficient production models? And then from there, it's really benchmarking a lot of facilities and bringing in data, confidential data where we protect the producer information. But we are able to build a data set that is able to form KPIs and benchmarks on by crop, by region, by climate zone to help us really guide that path toward more efficiency. And then from there, it's doing a lot of training and policy support, utility program support, and at the end of the day, we'll have a building rating system that will help verify performance toward efficiency and productivity. But also got a great advisory group here focused more in the United States, and we appreciate all of their support overseeing that work. And just to give you a glimpse of some of the activities we're working on this year, I really want to point your attention to the late June where we're going to start benchmarking with producers and with their supply chain partners so that we can bring those data insights to the level of an individual facility or an operation that has multiple facilities. So with that, I want to invite everyone to consider joining as a USDA pilot partner. Again, it's a free effort. We'll ask you to advise us on how to do benchmarking in a way that really works for you and your business. You need to provide some data, but we will not ask you to reveal any data that you don't want to reveal, right? So we'll work with you on how that happens. And then you'll get a lot of recognition, you'll get case studies, it'll be affiliated with the USDA, and you'll get some tips on how you can continue to be more efficient. You'll get a lot of data insights from the effort. So with that, I am really, as I said, honored to be speaking alongside Matt Mickens, and I'm really excited to learn about Elevate Farms and how they use data and to gather insights in their operations. Matt.
Thanks, Derek. And absolutely, I know you and we're having conversations right now, and exactly how Elevate Farms can contribute to that. So definitely looking forward to working with you on that.
Thank you.
And so yes, Elevate Farms, we do have a data team, and I will pull up my screen here. Okay, so before I introduce Elevate Farms, again, I am the Chief Science Officer, and I do want to just take a few moments to tell you my background and a little bit about my story and how I ended up at a company such as Elevate Farms. And so I started out a young intern, actually, and I actually got majority of my controlled environment ag experience at the NASA Kennedy Space Center. Now, as you can see, I wore my hair a little bit differently back then. This was about 10 years ago. But that internship launched me also into a postdoctoral fellowship experience where I actually spent 3 years at the Kennedy Space Center, and I got to do some amazing work and research. In the picture here, this is a NASA posting of me preparing media for space flight. Like I actually prepared payloads with plant growth experiments in them and launched them to space, and that was like really cool to do. And actually, my mentor is behind me, Dr. Joya Massa. And so also as a part of that fellowship, I had my own research, and I was interested, or actually I had developed an expertise in studying plant growth and how it responds to light wavelength, or essentially the color of the light. And as you can see in this photo, I wanted to investigate, kind of non-traditional or non-conventional light recipes. And here I have set up where I'm using white and green light. But in doing that, I actually became a plant scientist and found things and had observations that I published. And so here are actually some of the works that were produced during my time at NASA, some of my greatest hits, so to speak. But I came up, or I published a strategy on how you could identify, optimal light recipes for your crop. That means you can change the light recipe and affect the size of the plant, the shape of the plant, the weight of the plant, but also, secondary metabolite production, nutrients, that's both elementals and other beneficiary compounds. But there was also a time aspect. I wanted to see what light recipes were optimal during specific growth phases of your crop. And so that was one thing that I published, but I also presented this work, like the paper at the top here. I presented it in at least 3 different countries. And when I presented this in Rome, Italy, there was actually someone in the audience. There was a professor, Dr. Mike Dixon at the University of Guelph. And he saw my presentation, and by the end of that day, he actually asked me for my CV, and he had it in his hand. And by the end of the week, he actually set up a call for me to have with this guy, Amin Jadabji. He is the CEO and founder of Elevate Farms. And when speaking with him, like he told me his vision, and I understood it. And within a month of talking to him, he actually flew me up to Toronto and this is the beginnings of the vision that he had for farming. Again, Amin started out as a CEO running the family business in the paper industry, napkins, and his primary customers were hotels and restaurants. And they would come to him and they would tell him some of the challenges facing with food distribution and just the high operating costs of importing food. And that resonated with Amin, and he wanted to actually use that to solve a problem with food security. And that was through vertical farming. And so here, actually, the Weeder Roots facility, when he showed me this and he flew me up there, I actually saw his vision before he even finished telling me what it was. When I saw this, the fact that they were using LED light recipes that were backed up behind 30 years of research with the University of Guelph, I already knew exactly where he wanted to go, and we just really clicked. And again, this Weeder Roots facility was the beginnings of Elevate Farms. It's a pilot facility. It was meant and designed to be a proof of concept, but it employs hydroponic. As you can see, there are 7 layers with trays of plants, and each tray has a method or a technique of hydroponics that kind of is a hybrid of nutrient film technique, but also kind of like an ebb and flow. And we're working now in terms of building large-scale systems of this. And so I do want to show you a video that not only outlines Amin's vision, but basically it describes what Elevate Farm does and aspires to do with this technology.
Our fully automated facility can grow 450,000 kilos of leafy greens per year in any climate. Algorithms determine perfect growing conditions for a wide range of high-nutrient crops. Artificial intelligence-driven light recipes determine custom size, flavor, and nutrient values. The facility uses closed-loop water and air technology, saving up to 36 million liters of water annually. Data is continuously monitored and analyzed throughout the growth cycle. Lighting and climate adjustments are automatic. Within 20 to 30 days, nutrient-rich plants are transferred robotically to the harvest area. Each facility can grow up to 18 layers of leafy greens. Our indoor farming system is fully scalable and uses 1% of the water needed for traditional farming, all with minimal human intervention. Elevate Farms, local food security on a global scale.
So yeah, local food security on a global scale. That's the mission of Elevate Farms. And, growing more food with less is our objective. That's our goal. And that journey started just last year in 2020 when we actually started constructing our large-scale build-out. And that facility is in Welland, Ontario. And so just to give you an idea, this is a picture of the construction early on, but how we exactly elevate our farm, so to speak. We have this box within a box approach that we take when we install our farms. And so that actually gives us the capability and the control of the environment, or providing an environment that's actually separate from the warehouse. And in some instances, and just as in the case of Welland, we build both the warehouse and the actual controlled environment from the ground up. Or in some instances, like we're doing in New Jersey, which is the site that I'm overseeing directly, we're actually retrofitting an existing warehouse and installing the technology and the grow system inside. And also that being said, we do have another system in the pipeline in New Zealand, in Hamilton, New Zealand, which I believe is actually the headquarters of Bluelab, where we're building a warehouse that actually will house 3 tunnels. And so again, the concept is a box within a box, but as we call it, the grow tunnel system. And so just to give you an idea, this is what it looks like when that tunnel or that box is closed. And so primarily, in comparison to other vertical farms, we don't really utilize a lot of space. And so primarily, we can actually control or provide a controlled environment that has a high density of plants in a small growing area. For instance, this is only 5,000 square feet. So we're using maybe a quarter of the warehouse, and we can use the rest of the warehouse for other processing activities. And I also want to mention the way Elevate Farms, the concept is that Elevate Farms, we install the technology, we launch the farm, and in some instances even staff the farm and provide flow of operations, but usually that farm or that facility will be managed by a third party. And in this instance, in Welland, it's actually managed by Intravision Greens, Niagara. They're the ones that manage the facility, but also they are the brand of the produce that leaves the doors. Now, to give you an idea, this is what inside the box or the growth environment or the growth tunnel looks like. And so you can see the racking system here is complete. In this particular tunnel, it's actually 150 feet long, and it is 13 layers high. And we can actually, there are some layers that have varying degrees of height. So some layers are actually 5.5 inches in height. Some are even as high as 13 inches in height. So that gives us some flexibility in terms of what crops we can grow. And then just to give you some perspective on scale, this is a person here. So just to give you a flavor of the size of our grow tunnel environment and system. Now, I do want to go through exactly, in terms of how we grow more food with less. And I know I can hash out the marketing pitches that most vertical farms will say in terms of, we do have the, no pesticides, the traceability that we can provide, but, also the water savings. And I know there was a study published by Barbosa et al. 2015, where they said that most traditional farms, in particular in the Southwest US, they utilize 250 liters of water per kilogram of produce per year. And just in Welland, as of 2020, we used 8 liters per kilogram of produce. And mind you, we weren't operational for the full year of 2020, but we're even trying to improve that further. Like our goal now for 2021 is to bring it down even further to 6 liters per kilogram of produce. Now, I do want to show you just some graphics on how we recirculate our irrigation in our system. And just to give you some perspective, we have our system where we bring our nutrient water over and we irrigate our layers, as you can see, on a certain schedule. And then that irrigation water simply, once it's done, the plants receive what they need, that water is drained and it returns as return flow, and it's filtered and treated back to our nutrient system. Now, 90 to 95% of the water that the plants uptake is actually transpired through evapotranspiration. And that water can be captured, it is captured through dehumidification. And we condense it, and that condensate water, we actually treat it, filter it, and we bring it back as top-up water for our nutrients. And of course, that nutrient system is we're utilizing the Bluelab Pro controller. And I do want to give credit and acknowledge Intervision Group because they designed all of this. They work the miracles. You know, Paralee CA, Josh Seitman, and our architect Morgan Patterson, these guys do remarkable things on the conceptual design of this system. And now another component that I want to bring up is the automation that we use in terms of that helps us to grow more food with less. I do want to show you a quick video or some footage of our automated elevator lift that we use to actually insert our crops in. And so here, actually, you can see some action footage of our trays being inserted into the grow tunnel. Now, the racking system is on a gentle slope, so instead of using the energy required like in a conveyor, we're just letting gravity do the work for us. And so that's one aspect, and one way we actually grow more with less. And let me just progress here. So once the trays are inserted into the system, 28 to maybe 32 days later, this is what we get. And you know, I like this shot because it's pretty much the modern day field of lettuce, but except it's up. There we go. Now you can see it. Sorry about that. So this is the shot that I was trying to show. But yeah, this is 28 to 32 days later after that tray is inserted. This is what we have. This is, of course, the modern day field of lettuce. And I do want to emphasize the lighting that we use. So LED lighting allows us to bring the light fixtures considerably close to the canopy without causing any thermal damage to the tissues. And so we can actually, to the left or the right of the LED blaze here, this is actually the fastback model from the Intervision Group as well. But we also have these air tubes that inject CO2 directly into the canopy, but they also provide the adequate airflow that plants need. And again, this is just another shot of the Welland, the Intervision Greens Niagara green leaf product in our system. Now, in terms of efficiency of the LED blades from the Intervision Group that we use. So for instance, these fastback fixtures, as you can see, this is red Russian kale here. And so these blades are around 100 watts per fixture. And very rarely, and that's at full capacity, and very rarely do we have the need to utilize the fixtures at that full capacity. We're maybe using 60 to 80 watts. And then for instance, for our lettuce crops, we're actually dialing the intensity down just to prevent any tip burn or further issues later on in the cycle. But I wanted to mention, because I actually suggested that we grow red Russian kale because we were doing tests on this at NASA. And just earlier this year, red Russian kale made history on the space station because it was the first plant to be transplanted on orbit in space. And we were actually growing it in our system around at the same time. So I thought that was really. Now, another unique aspect and feature with Elevate Farms is our ability to actually in different light recipes during the cycle. And as you may know, this is right in the alley. And so we have proprietary light recipes where we can use a certain light recipe for specifically vegetative growth. And then we change the spectrum and we can finish out, as you can see, the drastic color difference here as it changes with the light spectrum. This is just indicative that this particular lettuce variety is producing a lot more of those secondary metabolites, those anthocyanins, and those beneficial compounds that make for healthier and much nutritious lettuce. And yeah, I think that there are other aspects that, in terms of measuring light intensity. I think, Caroline, did you have a question on that?
Thank you, Matthew. Just outstanding, exciting work, and looks mouthwatering. Yeah, I do have a question for you. So growers say that they know they need to measure, but they're always pressed for time. They're scrambling. You know how it is. So what do you think is really essential to measure besides pH and EC, of course. And how do you and your team incorporate this into your operation?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think, of course, one of the no-brainers is you have to measure the light intensity in terms of ppfd at the canopy level. And I know that there's a challenge, like when do you find the time to do it? And, if to growers that have operating, facilities, I know that there are monitoring routines that you have to do for food safety, but you can also integrate, these monitoring these parameters such as, light intensity into your operations, whether it be a weekly or biweekly. I highly, of course, recommend you measure your light intensity so you know what your crops, if they're getting too much light or they're not getting enough, because light intensity is directly correlated with your yield. And even in addition to light intensity, there are other aspects that, the dissolved oxygen content, or even just, doing analysis on your pathogens in your water. Like all of these things are things that you should be definitely looking out for in your operations. And so with that being said, just to give you, I do want to showcase a little bit more in our well-in facility and some of the other products that we are growing. And so we actually have a lettuce mix, and it is a mix from seed that we grow, and it grows really well, both for baby leaf and mature products. Also, mini romaine has been one of our products, and this is one of those trickier crops that you have to do because you have to have make sure you have adequate airflow. When using LED lighting in controlled environments, we tend to grow crops really fast, and so a lot faster than what crops are used to. And so there are ways you have to accommodate that, and one of those is you have to provide a decent amount of airflow just to ensure that that plant is moving the nutrients through its vascular system and it's getting the right amount of calcium to the newer leaf growth. And this is another one of my favorite shots. We also grow basil here. We've experimented with different varieties of basil, and I love going to the basil layer at our Welland facility because it smells so aromatic, and I'm hoping you could probably smell it through the computer screen, but it doesn't do enough justice. It's just amazing. And in terms of, again, another aspect in how we grow more with less, with basil in particular, we do play around with planting densities, and we do have trials in terms of multi-seeding just to make sure, or to see we're maximizing that optimal amount of produce per square foot in our facility. And so there's another aspect here where, of course, when you're growing basil at such a high density, you have to watch it because it can grow up into the lights. And so that is another aspect that we're doing at Elevate Farms, is we're actually using data modeling and science and algorithms to predict not only what the yields are, but also predict when are those optimal times to harvest the plant. And we're doing this using data. And so that's another aspect in terms of automating, that grower's instinct. Growers have a particular instinct where they know exactly when plants are going to hit exponential and, when to pull them out. And so we can automate that with data as well. And so that's another aspect that Elevate Farms is seeking to do. Another one of our products is arugula. And arugula, when in our system, is exceptionally spicy. I actually did not like arugula before working at or supporting the Welland site, but I like this arugula. It has a very strong flavor that I've gotten accustomed to. And our head grower, Dan Bailey, he could attest to that as well. But definitely our arugula is exceptionally spicy. And then this last photo, I just wanted to kind of capture, just the profound effects of, the Elevate and the Elevate system. And so, as you can see, this picture has, it shows like all of the gears and the steel, and then you just see green. Our the CEO, Amin, basically said, what we do, it looks like it's something from the future. And, when I see this photo, it's almost like, well, the future is now. Like, we're doing it. We're changing the way we farm. And essentially having control and manipulating the environment and using that to provide the best high quality product available. That's our aim. If we can create an environment where the plants are happy, then we're happy. And I do have some footage to show you exactly how happy our plants are if you don't believe me. So take a look at this one little clip. So this plant is actually literally dancing in our system. And so again, if you don't believe that our plants are happy, this is evidence of that. And the team sent me that, and they did not tell me what was causing the plant to dance. And so we spent like 2 days just trying to figure out, what in the world was going on. But again, I thought that would be a really cool thing to show. So with that being said, that is the conclusion of my presentation, and I do want to thank you for your attention today. It's been awesome presenting Elevate Farms and my story, and where we intend to go with this thing. So, and if there are any questions, here's my contact information. I'll leave up for a little bit, but thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matt. And agreed, a dancing plant is a sign of a happy plant. But how can we be sure that the environment that is helping the plant thrive is also achieving our sustainability objectives? So for that, we're going to turn back to Derek for a discussion about measurement and verification. Over to you, Derek.
Thank you, Caroline. And Matt, that was amazing. Really amazing to share the stage with you, and very inspiring about what can be done.
Thanks,
so
Derek, likewise, man.
Yeah, if we go to this question of, how do we measure and verify our way to, this resilient future that we all want? Basically, what we need to do is move from unverified claims, internally generated information, toward a scenario where there's a standardized and trusted approach to measuring and verifying, right? And I'm going to tell you about our PowerScore benchmarking platform, which can do that. But before I jump into that, I want to take it just a little bit higher to the level and build on some things that Matt talked about. So really, to move toward the sustainability vision and promise of CEA, move that into reality, we need 3 approaches, really, right? We need the vision, and that's to really think about, like, what is possible here, right? And I really reflect on Julia Kernick, the presentation she made from WWF on this Bluelab webinar a few weeks back, where she showed, I was struck by this one old building along the river in St. Louis. And she had this vision of, being able to repurpose this building, take some public investment that could be partnered with private investment, and revitalize a part of a city to grow local food with local people for that local community. That's amazing. That's a great vision, right? We need that. We also need these models, right? And Matt talked about how Elevate is using models internally through data to predict profitability, harvest cycles, all this other stuff, right? We also see models being used a lot of times for cheerleaders of the CEA movement, where they're modeling, a crop, let's say a green that's grown in California in a field and is shipped across the country, and versus comparing that to a model of an indoor farm that's growing the same crop but doesn't have to travel as far and can meet locally. And so they're calculating carbon emissions avoided and things like that through these models. That's great. We need that. It's helpful to predict and project and to help explain this vision, right? What we also need is to measure and verify, right? What actually is happening? What actually happened over the course of a harvest cycle or over the course of an annual production cycle, right, or series of production cycles. What is a facility actually doing in terms of use of resources relative to the amount it's producing? And there's a lot of variability in that, because as we all know, the type of building, the climate zone it's in, the crop it's growing, the watering rates affecting the dehumidification, you know, and on and on and on and on and on. The reality is none of us really know exactly how to make whatever model we're talking about the most efficient. We're all figuring this out, right? So it behooves us all to work together to figure out a system that can be, again, standardized and trusted, using industry vetted KPIs that are already, you know, recognized throughout the supply chain, and really to grow a data set of individual farm data, but growing a data set that includes hundreds of farms, right, from different regions, different growing practices, different crops. And then from that data set, we can gain a lot more insights, and we can begin to disaggregate and really understand what is driving the most efficiency, what is driving the most productivity, right? And then we can line that up to what questions consumers are going to be asking, and we know that consumers are beginning to ask and will continue to ask, right? And it must be trusted, right? And so what I want to convey is really that everybody's really interested in ESG right now, and that's great. And there's access to new capital. There's a lot of investors that are interested, including some of those that are shown here, who are on our advisory council. And we can't, you know, so we get a lot of stories about the E, right? The E benefits, the environmental benefits. We're getting some stories about social benefits, but what we really need to concentrate on is the G. And governance really relies on data, right? And so that data needs to be standardized, it needs to be comparable, and it needs to be trusted, right? How is my operation performing year over year? How does that performance compare to other farms, right? And is that information that, you know, is resident in that facility, is it verifiable? Is it standardized in a way, and is it comparable to other farms, and can it be verified, right? That's where we need to be moving. And that path to efficiency, productivity, and profitability really starts with benchmarking, right? And this is an EPA statistic. This is relevant to or relative to commercial buildings, so more like office buildings. But I think it's transferable, right? Or at least some percentage of savings certainly is to the CEA space, just through benchmarking and tracking performance. And again, comparing that understanding to what other buildings are doing is helping building owners or occupants find energy savings, right? And so that's what we're after. That's what we're trying to help producers with, right? That's what we are helping producers with, is figuring out how competitive is your facility, right? At the end of the day, this is a very competitive market, and competition means you need to understand what the others are doing, right? And how you're comparing to them. So we've got a non-profit benchmarking platform that is enabling year-over-year performance rankings for both production environments and research chambers, right? And it's all based on industry standard KPIs. And you can see they're in both, you know, more American units and SI units available to be used globally. This is a free service, and you know, we can help producers track all this stuff. I want to emphasize that what we're doing is secure, and it must be secure because it must be trusted, right? We have to protect the confidentiality of the producers. And so we're working with MSA, which is a global leader in data security and analytics. They work on HIPAA compliance. They work in benchmarking in a bunch of other industrial sectors that are really concerned about confidentiality. And we're building this system together with producers and investors in the supply chain to really make sure that we clearly convey who has access, who has use, and ownership of the data. The data is also, or our platform is also vetted. You know, as I mentioned, it's been used by the supply chain in the cannabis cultivation market, which is the same supply chain over here, right? So as an example, we've got a quote from Casey from Fluence about how they use the Power Score And we've got a number of other members of our technical advisory council that are out there supporting their customers with our platform to help their customers be more efficient. And the platform is also trusted. It not only has the investment of the USDA in our project and the support of the KPIs that we're developing for CEA, it's been funded by Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, and we've been interacting with more than 350 producers who have submitted data into the platform and have trusted us with that data. And the data is providing insights, and that's what's really exciting. You know, we all know that cultivator preferences are really driving a lot of variability in performance, right? And Matt talked about that, those grower insights, right? It's really critical that we help growers use data to do what they do better. And we know that there's a lot of opportunity to just improve along the margins and help growers do that. We're seeing that in the data. We're also seeing that greenhouse carbon emissions performance is really vulnerable to location, right? How much are you having to heat based on how cold is it getting in the shoulder seasons or the cold season? What's the electricity grid you're drawing from? How many other fuels are you using, and what are the CO2 impacts of those fuels? But we're also seeing technologies being validated. So this bar chart is showing you actual data from the Power Score from actual facilities using different light solutions, and we're seeing that those farms with LEDs are actually improving not just their energy savings, not just their kilowatt hours, but their actual productivity as well. 80% improvements in productivity per unit of electricity consumed. Really powerful stuff. And the final thing I want to conclude on is that, you know, we all say we need more data, and it's true, we do. But the reality is we have a lot of data in these facilities, and Matt talked about how much Elevate Farms has data and they use data. And what we need to do is be smarter with that data and leverage it and aggregate it and work together in a collaborative way, and make it easy to bring in data points 8, 27, and 64 among 100, because we only need a few to really build into this common data set that can provide that map toward greater efficiency and productivity for all. So that's what we're working on. And with that, I just want to remind everybody that we're looking for partners for the USDA pilot project. And you know, we hope to work with as many of you in the future as want. And it's a free service that we provide. So with that, I just want to conclude by answering the question of how can we work toward more food at less resources. It's really through collaboration, data, and transparency. And I really want to thank everybody for being part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Derek. These programs are really powerful, and what a fantastic opportunity for producers. We're interested in your thoughts about the obstacles that are still in front of us. What would you say are the biggest challenges we're facing in growing food more efficiently?
Matt, do you want to take that, or?
Well, yeah, I can tackle that. Well, I know, you know, just in the area of vertical farming, and, you know, a lot of these operations have very, you know, capital intensive efforts on the front end. But with that being said, one issue is challenge definitely is determining when and where do you automate the process. You know, where does automation come into play? You know, there are facilities that have, you know, millions and millions of capital and hundreds of employees that, you know, create high operating costs, you know, in terms of labor. And just for comparison, at the Welland site, we have actually just 9 employees, and, you know, excluding maybe the 4 or 5 managerial roles, in which one that I'm actually, you know, contributing to as well. Also, of course, we have to tackle, you know, the energy costs, and you know, that is definitely, you know, a challenge. And then also, you know, talent as well. You know, having, you know, growers and people with knowledge of plant science, another aspect that, you know, we can have automation and technology and all of these, great bells and whistles, but you got to have, competent people to tell these, to tell your data team, this is what we want, this is what we need, So that's finding talent, that has that genuine, instinct and is a challenge because they're few. So that's just my take on it.
And I would just add that lack of a baseline understanding of what is the energy targets that a producer should be looking for, and trying to map toward, again, in this climate zone with this crop in this type of grow environment, so that we have that beacon, that horizon that we're shooting for. Otherwise, we're improving year over year, but are we really getting to the numbers that truly matter?
And one of the things that I'm taking away from our conversation today is that really it's more risky to keep doing things the same way we've always been doing without advancing. It's a really good way to get left behind. So, if you're using data to predict yields, your business is actually far more secure than if you're not taking and applying these measurements. And I got another question for both of you. Your thought leaders, what advice do you give growers who want to achieve greater resource efficiency for the cost savings and the sustainability of their farms? And but at the same time, they may not have dedicated R&D resources, or they're worried about the risk of any yield loss or crop quality loss. What do you say to growers who are worried about these things?
Well, I'll just add a couple quick points and then turn it over to Matt, who works directly with growers on a daily basis. But from our standpoint as energy and technical experts, we see at the design phase there's just so much opportunity for this market to really focus on integrated design and making sure your whole design team is there and clear on what your objectives are, and that you're as precise as possible in terms of the grow conditions that you're trying to achieve in your facility. Otherwise, you're going to oversize your HVAC equipment and just crush yourself on CapEx and ultimately OpEx as well, right? And to commission these buildings. And that was surprising to me to see that a lot of people are, with a lot of money, are assuming that their construction teams have got everything figured out and they can just turn on the lights and start growing without getting independent verification that everything is working as it should be. And we know that commissioning is a common practice in other building sectors and really returns a lot in terms of investment. So beyond that, I would just, in operations, I would say it's really like making sure the staff are trained, that you're doing that constant benchmarking, and you're really looking at automation, like Matt said, beyond that.
Yeah, and to add on to that, to Derek's point, as some advice for growers actually, and I'm actually working on this facility that I'm overseeing. One way you could increase your efficiency is look into third party for electricity supplies. There are third party companies who are looking to reduce your rate explicitly, and they will take your usage, history over the last 6 months or a year, and then they will explicitly give you a lower electricity rate in terms of delivery supply charges. You can definitely look into that, and you don't have to settle on the primary utility company as your electricity provider. Now, in terms of your question, Carolyn, and for growers who are hesitant or who say they don't have any kind of R&D setup or platform, one thing you can do, for instance, in terms of substrates or media, which we found at Elevate Farms, at least at the Welland site, has a profound effect on your yield. And what we've actually done is we've trialed different substrates or plug type medias for hydroponics, and we've thrown them in the production system. And so that way you can literally do R&D like as on the go in production, and whatever the results may be, you can still sell that produce. And so that's one way where you're worried about not having the platform just yet. You can optimize your system in production without considerable loss.
That's really good practical advice. Thank you both. I'm just marveling at how quickly an hour can pass. And we must wrap up now.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you both for your industry leadership in moving CEA farming forward. You both really exemplify how leadership means pushing forward and giving back, and it's inspiring. I also want to thank our audience for your time and engagement today. You will receive an email with additional resources, some of those things you heard about today, and a link to this recording. We invite you to learn more at bluelab.com and on our blog, The Art of Growing. And we look forward to seeing you at our future CEA event hosted by Bluelab. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Awesome.
See you soon.